we got a big matchup this week between Oregon and Penn State. Of course, the whiteout game. Our guest tonight is the host of Locked On Nittany Lions. He said, just messaged me and said he can still make it, but he will be a few minutes shy of the show starting. So we'll give him some time. Uh, but yeah, I mean, this is a big game this week. We could talk all week about you know the Alabama Georgia game, and we have pretty much so far. We haven't really talked much on Penn State and Oregon. Now, with that being said, I think that's probably going to be the better game. And I know maybe it sounds crazy. I mean, it's very possible that both of these games live up to great expectation and great um like just I mean atmosphere and everything. So we got to actually do our preview and prediction, which we'll try to do that with Zach Seyko, who's our guest tonight, when he gets in here. So um yeah, this should be a really fun uh show to do tonight. So again, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe button. I did predict Alabama to win the Georgia game. I think it's going to be as low scoring as it's probably been ever against these two teams. I see a lot of good defense. Um, I don't expect it to be like last year, 17-13. So you can troll me for that. You can you can say really whatever you want to. So that being said, um, I don't know. I'm gonna wait. We'll clip the Penn State Oregon preview tonight on the show. But I don't want to actually predict anything and really talk much about it with until we get Zach on. So we're just still kind of waiting there. He's not necessarily late. He did let me know ahead of time. Hey, it's gonna be a few minutes. So um, but yeah, let's see. Type some stuff up. There we go. What is going on here? Let's see. What's up, brother? Ramajama Taylor. How you doing? Let's you know what? In the meantime, while we're waiting on our guest, I'm gonna drop that link. And I'll just kick you guys off once he gets in the back room. But if y'all want to join the show tonight, like by all means, feel free to. We'd love to hear from you. Get some I don't know if I want to say get some insight. I mean, yeah, it depends on who you are. I mean, if you want to join us, feel free to talk up some Penn State and Oregon. Feel free to really just talk up the Big Ten. So, um, but yeah, I this is going to be a really fun matchup. I did send him the link. Let me see. Oh, yep, he got it. He got it. All right. So, with that being said, everybody, we're going to go ahead and bring on our special guest this evening. He is the host of Locked On Nittany Lions, Locked On Penn State, however you want to say it there. I've reached out to him before, have not got him on the show yet. Zach Seyko, am I saying that correctly, buddy?
You sure are. Thank you.
Yes, sir. How you doing tonight, man? And let's let us know how you're doing, but also just kind of talk about this week for Penn State leading into the big game.
Yeah, I mean, could any of us be doing any better, right? It's the heart of the college football season, conference play. elite matchups. This is a top five game. This is a chance for Penn State to kind of change some narratives. So I'm doing as well as I can, and I think college football fans are. I mean, there's games all across. Penn State, Oregon's getting a lot of attention. There's plenty of other games that are just exciting in the Big Ten across all of college football. But this is the game of the week, right? This is the maybe the game of the season, game of the regular season. Penn State and Oregon.
It could be. I think it could live up to as good of a game as maybe it was last year in the Big Ten championship. Obviously, though, let's get in and talk about it a little bit. How does it differ for Penn State this year? It being the whiteout compared to being on a big roll last year, leading into going into what was the Big Ten title. Like, how is it a little different this time around?
Well, I mean, that's just it. It's the difference between, neutral site, middle of the country versus Oregon making a cross country trip to the eastern part and
Hmm.
playing at home field advantage for Penn State, right? Sold out crowd, Beaver Stadium, whiteout. It doesn't get any. Now, a night game does benefit Oregon. If this was at noon, that certainly wouldn't help them. A really good football team playing them at noon Eastern time, but I think the TV networks and the scheduling was a little particular with that one. It's okay when it's against Northwestern. It's not okay when it's against Penn State or maybe it was or let's say Michigan or Ohio State. Right? They're not going to do it for that. But Northwestern gets a little bit of. We'll try to give them an extra advantage there just to keep it competitive. But no, still Oregon looked good in that game. But yeah, that's the huge difference. You have 100,000 plus that are all screaming and cheering for Penn State, and it's not that not that neutral site for Oregon in a Big Ten title game. So this definitely that definitely has implications. It's also the cross country travel. There's no meeting in the middle. Penn State doesn't have to do any travel. They get to wake up and show up at the stadium. Oregon's got to find all the travel arrangements, a 6 hour flight. That's exhausting. That's exhausting. I know they've traveled this season to this point too, right? They had to go to Evanston, but it's not the same. The jet lag eventually is going to catch up to you, and like I said, that is a 6 hour flight for the Oregon Ducks.
No doubt. I mean, that was one of the things that I think a lot of people were talking about when this whole conference realignment began was, oh, no big deal. The Big Ten's going to have all these like teams and be at 18, 20, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is. I think it's 18 right now. But the big thing they talked about was, especially for Oregon and Washington, um, being like right there at the top of it all, the cross country travel and how it can either like not phase you at all. It depends on your mindset, I guess, and just kind of, maybe it just affects you. Maybe it wears you out. I mean, even though I'm sure they're flying and the players might rest up on the plane, it's like, let's, not get too ahead of ourselves with the fact that it's really not that easy going across country.
No, it's not enjoyable. I mean, Penn State's won a cross country trip against USC, but we've seen other teams just they struggle with those cross country trips. They're not the same team. Even though Penn State won against USC, it took a lot. It took everything. That was a leave it all on the football field type of game. They were down 20-6, and then eventually they settled in. They needed overtime and a game winning field goal. So it's not like, hey, Penn State won decisively. It was convincing. And then they got to do it against UCLA. Easier matchup though. So I don't think we have to
Yeah.
be too worried. So that's Oregon looked at people came away from that game against Northwestern. They looked sloppy. So the travel absolutely impacts, and teams don't. They certainly don't look their best. Even if they come away from a win, they're not normally covering. They're on a spread.
Yeah, for sure. Let's get in and talk about Penn State this year. Obviously, off to a really good start this year, as they usually are, but it always comes to James Franklin can't win the big one. And that was the case up until making the playoffs last year. They obviously had some stuff go their way. They make the Big Ten title. They're a player or two away from potentially winning that and getting a first round bye. But, when you look at this game, specifically this year, put what happened last year behind you for Penn State. what does Penn State need in this matchup other than it being a whiteout game and the home crowd behind them? Is that all they need? Do they need more than just that whiteout energy against Oregon? And ultimately, what is it that they need? Because they've looked really great. They got two stud running backs coming back with
Mhm.
Singleton and Katron Allen. Drew Aller opted to forego the draft and come back, so they have all these key pieces. What can we expect Saturday night that they need to show up?
Yeah, I mean, Penn State's just I mean, they're a really good team, right? They have an elite roster. They've upgraded their coaches. I think when you look back at all of the matchups over the years, I don't know that it's just a one person deal. That it's a James Franklin. It's all on him. It's his fault. He meddles. I mean, I think of the game against Ohio State where, the defense allows 39 points. Okay, well, who's in charge of the defense? It's Brent Pry. Okay, well, I mean, it does fall on the head coach at some point in time, and it's like the same thing against Oregon last season in the Big Ten championship. Pardon me, is that a Tom Allen led defense gave up 45 points, and okay. Penn State's offense was, you shouldn't be losing a lot of games if you're putting up over 35 points. You shouldn't be losing a lot of games there. So I think what's different about this Penn State team versus ones in the past is there are truly no excuses. You can't point and say, okay, that's a weakness or that's not close. James Franklin got the offensive coordinator that he wanted. Okay. James Franklin got the defensive coordinator that he wanted for $3 million, right? That's what it cost. He was able to get players out of the transfer portal that he thought would better this team. Okay. So now you have those things where there's truly not an excuse, and we're gonna find out eventually come this Saturday between Penn State and Oregon. But in the past, there was always something you could point to and say, hey, this is lacking. James Franklin doesn't have this. If he had this, well, he finally has everything he could ask for within reason. Now it's time to deliver. And to say that, okay, Penn State isn't beating top 5 teams, they're not beating top 10 teams routinely as much as people would like them to, but they're also underdogs pretty routinely in those games. It's not like they're favored against Ohio State and Michigan and Oregon. The only team I even consider that one against Notre Dame, that was a toss up. It wasn't truly a, hey, Penn State is picked to win. They should win this game. They are losing the games that they're supposed to lose according to the projections. They're winning the games that they're supposed to win according to the projections. Penn State just hasn't been the better team on paper and on game day. But now that because they beat an SMU, no problem. Is that not a big game? They beat Boise State, no problem. Is that not a big game? They go on the road to USC and beat them. Is that not a big game? Those kinds of games that it's like, okay, well, it's not a top 5 team or it's a not, then change the conversation. Penn State struggles with top 10 teams. Penn State struggles with top 5 teams. To say that James Franklin, for the life of him, cannot win a big game, that is not true. Penn State has. They've won bowl games as well. So, but when it comes to these elite matchups, yeah, they struggle with, it's primarily Ohio State and Michigan, and then selectively a Notre Dame in this instance, and Oregon this past season. So it extends now beyond Ohio State. But that's the thing; all those excuses are off the table. This time, Penn State is truly projected to win this game and has things aligning for them. It would, yeah, right? So that's the expectation. If Oregon was favored, it kind of follows the same sort of flow here. I think you're muted on the other end.
Sorry, that's my fault. I'll
No,
cut
you're good.
that out. No, as you were saying, it kind of falls the same way if Oregon was favored in this game. It's only a 3.5 point spread. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like Penn State's a heavy top dog favorite in this game, but there's definitely a underdog mentality when you look at the rest of college football looking at Penn State. Even though they had the good playoff run last year until they met Notre Dame, it's still one of those things as if, hey, James Franklin can't get over the hump and win the big one,
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. I do want to talk about some of Penn State's players. coming into this season. Obviously, Drew Aller comes back at quarterback, and you have
Mm-hmm.
Katron and Nick Singleton. But I noticed looking at the team this week a little bit leading up to our interview, a lot of key transfers. I say a lot. I mean, 8 guys is still pretty good for Penn State. Obviously, King Mack had transferred to my Crimson Tide and then decided to go back to Penn State. Trevor Pena
Mm-hmm.
is wide receiver, Amar Campbell. Who have you seen out of all these transfers? And there's only a handful of them. Who's been the most impactful for the Nittany Lions this year, you think?
Tangibly speaking, I would say so far Amari Campbell. I mean, I've been really
Hmm.
impressed with him. You could make the, I mean, somebody would make the same argument for Trevor Pena. So the two guys you named, the two guys that they targeted in the spring transfer portal window, have made immediate impacts. I mean, Trevor Pena does look like that go-to guy, that safety blanket for Drew Aller, and we're going to see more of it, right? The matchups against these other teams didn't really call for it. They didn't call for Drew Aller and Trevor Pena to be, hey, this 1-2 punch, let's get you 10 catches, 100 yards, and a touchdown type of situation, because there wasn't that back and forth, right? Penn State didn't need to be pedal to the metal, full throttle, and let's push the football down the field in an aerial attack to try to feed our transfer wide receivers. No, that isn't the case. Amari Campbell, though, fitting very well into Jim Knowles' defense. Him and Tony Rojas have formed a nice dynamic duo there of just speed. They see the game so well. It's it. Amari Campbell is such a cerebral football player. Like, him coming in, and there might be a misconception that, oh, it was because of the new installation of the defense that it was a fresh start for everybody. It was a fresh start for Tony Rojas, all of the other linebackers. So Amari Campbell kind of has an even race here, but he's take it and he's won. I mean, he's kind of it's him and Rojas are a 1A 1B, but it's good to see that there's really no, oh, he's got to get situated. It's going to take him 4 or 5 games. It's going to take him maybe the second half of the season for him to really break out. No, he's broken out. He's a guy. He'll lead the team in tackles on a given day. He lives in the backfield. He's very good at reading opposing offenses. Like, nothing really gets by him. So this Jim Knowles defense has helped bring out more of his talent. Where at North Carolina, he's just trying to keep things. He's just trying to stop the bleeding. He's trying to keep this. He's trying to keep that defense. There's so many, so many holes in the bucket that he's just trying to plug them all up. And that now he gets into a system where, hey, I know the guy across from me is just as talented, and I can go make plays, and I can take some more risks here. So that's what's really impressed me about North Carolina linebacker transfer Amari Campbell.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk up Drew Aller in this offense, and more
Mm-hmm.
specifically, what you've kind of read. Maybe is there any insight you could give us on Oregon as far as what you've heard or seen this week that leading into this game defensively for the Ducks? Obviously, this has been a team that on both sides of the ball has looked pretty complete. They looked like the team last year until they ran back into Ohio State in the playoffs, and they brought some guys back. They obviously had Dylan Gabriel go pro. They bring in Dante Moore at quarterback, who I think is having a pretty good season. So,
Mm-hmm.
just overall looking at this Oregon team, I want to ask you offense and defense. Let's start with, well, whichever one you want to go with, but I guess specifically on defense, because I think there's a lot of emphasis on letting Drew Aller be himself, be the quarterback for this team, and what could be his final season at Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look at Oregon, how are they complete defensively, and how are they a big threat there? And then I would ask the same thing offensively.
Again, so remember, Penn State had success against Oregon's defense in that Big Ten championship game. And that
Mhm.
defense, do we think it's the same? Do we think it's better than what they were doing last year or at that time? And it's hard for me to say that, yes, Oregon's defense is either a step better or significantly better. They're either the same or maybe they took a step back because they had so much turnover. It helps when they go and get players in the transfer portal, similar to Penn State. They get Dylan Thieneman. I mean, they return some talent as well. A Tatum Tuioti, a Mateo Uiagalelei. That's one of the best defensive end combos in the Big Ten in the entire country. Honestly, you get Bryce Betcher back. A lot of freshman talent that's had to step up at all 3 levels of the defense: defensive line, interior in particular, at the linebacker spot, and in the secondary mostly. A lot of first and second year players, but they are talented. that chemistry factor, that's Oregon's going to be a much better. That's the thing. We're seeing just kind of the first iteration of this Oregon team. I think Oregon, for what they're going to be even better later on in the season. That's a team that hasn't even hit its peak yet, hasn't even hit its stride. I think there's only room for them to grow because of how much young talent they have on both sides of the football, but mainly, particularly the defense. I would like to think that Penn State, because they return the offensive coordinator, the quarterback, both running backs, the entire offensive line. They get veteran talent at the wide receiver spots, tight ends that just move up, increase their roles. They've been within the program. These aren't brand new players. They've been there for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, the tight end depth. So that's where I say, okay, Oregon's defense, and then you factor in the travel, and you factor in that Penn State has 2 weeks to prepare for a bye. That's what I'm looking at, because remember, the differentiating factor the first time was that Tom Allen could not figure out how to stop Will Stein's offense in Indianapolis. Jim Knowles has done this twice, and he's done it very well. That wasn't a close game that second time around in the Rose Bowl. Okay, that was
Mhm.
complete domination against it. Will Stein had no answers for Jim Knowles. Is that going to happen again? Probably not. That's not going to happen again, but it helps Penn State's side of things in a close game like that. I mean, Jim Knowles is, I would say, subjectively and objectively the best defensive coordinator in all of college football, and that's going to help you win games. So when I look at the total, I think it is about, when I look at the total matchup, I do think it's more on Penn State's offense versus Penn State's defense, because Penn State's defense is going to set them up with some nice opportunities. Can the offense finish drives? Because they haven't been doing that as well as they should. Can they? They're not really turning the ball over, which is good. You shouldn't do that with a senior group, but you should be able to finish drives. You should be able to convert within the red zone. You basically should pick up where you left off a year ago, and we haven't seen that entirely. We've seen it in moments, but not enough as you would think. I just think Penn State was, if you ask me personally, I think that Penn State was completely disinterested in this 3-game non-conference schedule. It's when can we get to Oregon? When can we get to Oregon? When can we get to Oregon? Nobody's going to admit that. But let's be honest, we're all thinking it on the Penn State side of things. Gosh, we
Yeah.
just got to get through Nevada. We got to get through FIU, Nevada. From a media perspective, from a fan perspective, you would be lying if you were a fan saying, when can we get to Oregon? I mean, that was the off-season discourse over here, was just, who cares about these first 3 games? Get me to Oregon. You don't think the team's thinking that too? We're all human.
Yeah. No doubt, man. And it's. I don't think that's a situation where they're overlooking these other teams. Because obviously, I mean, look, you play some small, and no disrespect to Nevada or anybody else you guys have played. I'm not here to rip on that, but let's call it what it is. You play some high schools, right? Villanova,
Mm-hmm.
their men's basketball, but that's I mean, 52-6.
Mm-hmm.
Penn State went into those games. Let's just be real. Let's get to Big Ten play and show what we're made of.
Yeah.
We know we can handle these first 3 games. Now you turn the page, you get to this game this week, and I look at the rest of their schedule. Not to necessarily overlook Oregon, but I do want to kind of talk about Penn State throughout the rest of the season. Let's say they take only one loss somewhere, and it's going to be tough. They do have a bye week between a road game with Iowa, a road game with Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
They got to go to Michigan State. They got to play Indiana. They got a couple interesting challenges. If it's up to you, Zach, let me ask you this. Let's say, well, okay, I'll ask it from both sides. Let's say they win Oregon and they take one loss on the schedule somewhere else. Who would you want it to be against? And let's say they take a loss to Oregon and they had to take another loss, but they still got in the playoffs at 10-2. Um, like who we looking at here that's a big threat to the Nittany Lions on this schedule? I mean, is it obvious that it's Ohio State
Yes.
or does someone else stand out?
Yep. Nope. That's the. There will be some grace if they lose to Indiana after what we've seen, and I think Indiana's going to continue this trend. I do think Indiana's a legitimate Big Ten title contender. moving forward. Now they're kind of they put themselves. I mean, that's a top 10 team. I get it. It's at home, but this wasn't. Hey, it's 28-21. It's 28-24. 63-10, man. That's pretty brutal against a top 10 team that returned the most talent in college football from the season before. So they can afford two losses: Oregon and Indiana, Oregon and Ohio State, Ohio State and Indiana, right? Ohio State and Oregon. The obvious one that will give you the most grace is on the road in Columbus, because that's probably
Hmm.
going to be the number one team in the country. That's probably going to, I mean, that's again a road game. If you lose to them, okay, well, it's understandable. And you have 10 years of precedence to say why this is justified. It happens every time. What should we expect anything different? Losing to Indiana at home doesn't have as much grace, even though Indiana could and very well should be a top 10 team by the time that game rolls around. It's it's still, well, Penn State was in the top three. Penn State will probably be, even if they lose to, now if they lose to Oregon and Ohio State, would they be in the top five still? I don't know, but that's going to be a top 10 matchup probably. And then you obviously can't lose to anybody else. You know, oh, UCLA, they won't lose to UCLA or Northwestern, but at Iowa's always tough. They still got to go on the road to Michigan State. Michigan State will be better as the season goes on. That's a well-coached team at a minimum. And then Nebraska is, at least, again, a well-coached team. They have talent. They could try to play spoiler. So you have two mulligans. That's why Oregon kind of becomes a must-win, because I didn't think Indiana would be that game that, well, that turns into a toss-up. That shouldn't be a toss-up. Now it
Yeah.
is. So win against Oregon because you have everything going in your favor. You are never going to get a better setup like this. This is a top five game. I don't care that Oregon's ranked sixth according to the AP voters. They are a top five team. I would say they are better than LSU. I would say they are better, even though Miami has the credentials because of the schedule they played. I would say they're better than Miami as well. So this is a top five team. You have the perfect setup. Win this game, because you don't know what your team's going to look like going into Ohio State. You don't know what it's going to look like going into Indiana. You know what you have now with 2 weeks to prepare. Like I said, there's really not an excuse here. You got the coordinators. You got your veterans back. You got players in the transfer portal. You got a bye week. You got an easy non-conference schedule. You're healthy. No excuses. Win against Oregon.
For sure. They have to win this game. I fully agree with you. Is there also a side of you, though, that says if you're going to take one loss or even two, would you go ahead and get it out of the way because you know that with Ohio State and Oregon, those are going to be the two best teams you play? Do you go ahead and get it out the way and look at the rest of these games and win out?
I mean, everything's I don't really want to say, if I had to pick it, I'd like Penn State to go 12-0, go to the Big Ten championship, win the Big Ten championship, and then
Right.
kind of let
That's
the, yeah,
every team's dream right
yeah,
there. Yeah.
let the, I would prefer Penn State to not lose to Indiana at home.
Hmm.
Again, like I said, I'm here to say that Oregon's a top five team in the country. So there is a little more understand. It's still a home game for them, but that one's at least a little more understanding. They will get a mulligan. No one's going to lose their minds if they lose to Ohio State on the road. Like that's that. So Penn
Yeah.
State can go 11-1, possibly even still get into the Big Ten championship. Probably a rematch against Ohio State if that's the case. If they win everything else, because then they'll hold the tiebreaker against Oregon. They'll hold the tiebreaker over Indiana. That kind of deal. If we project those things. So if I had to say a second one, it would be Oregon, because the losses earlier in the season are going to look better because they do. If Penn State
Hmm.
has two losses in the final four games of the season, or final, I guess it would be final five games of the season. My math's probably, I don't have their schedule pulled up in front of me. Let me do that real quick. So we're to Ohio State. Okay, yeah. So you lose two games in the final five of them. That's just, and back to back like that, it's just not going to look as good. So yeah,
Yeah.
the logical preference would be to say, have them lose to Oregon, have them lose to Ohio State, if you still think they can get into the playoff at 10-2, which I do, because those are two top five losses. Just same old Penn State.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, nothing new for James Franklin there if
Nothing
that
new. Yeah,
happens, right?
exactly.
And I know the fans, man, like just they're not. I don't think they're getting tired of James Franklin. Obviously, I thought he did a fantastic job. The stuff did fall in their favor, but made it competitive in that Big Ten title, made a playoff run. I feel like it's kind of calmed down a little bit. A couple years ago, it seemed like the seat was getting a little bit warm, but things are working out in their favor. Um,
I mean, I think
I
he's one of the
yeah,
safest. I think he has one of the safest jobs in the country. I don't think there's
yeah.
any. If
He's got one of the biggest jobs in the country because that's a big time program at Penn
mm-hmm.
State. But it's a safe job because of the fact that he's well. First off, he hasn't had a losing season yet, at least to my
And
knowledge. So he's had
they've won double digit games. Yeah, he's never had a losing
every
season at Penn
year pretty
State.
much.
They rack up bowl. It's just it's I mean to an extent it's an ungratefulness kind of. You know, 10 win seasons, 11 win seasons. Well, that's not Penn State football. Okay, well, you know, Penn
Hmm.
State football, last time they won a national championship, I mean, 1994 in my opinion, but 1986, it's been a
Against Miami. Yeah.
it's been a long time. And so I think James Franklin deserves a lot of credit. And I because I don't think people realize, and people are going to say, you know, okay, well, he's just obsessed with James Franklin. That's I want to think about this for a moment because Penn State did not have the facilities, they did not have the NIL. They were really when it came to the changing landscape of college football, people don't see this. But behind closed doors, James Franklin's the one that said we need to do XYZ if we want to keep up. You're seeing what's going on at Wisconsin. If
Yeah.
Wisconsin does not have it figured out when it comes to facilities, when it comes to dormitories, when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to all those things that SEC schools and Ohio State and Michigan and Oregon that they all have, and it's the amenities of college football. And if you don't, well, we can't do that because that's not right. Okay, but that's the game. That's the game. You
Yeah.
know, paying players, that's the game. And James Franklin's the one that said, we need this. So from a CEO factor, like he gets it. He might not be the best X's and O's head coach, but he knows how to run a college football team. He knows how to run a program. And for the first time at Penn State, he has finally hand selected the coordinators and the coaching staff to his liking. There are no complaints. The offensive coordinator is his choice. The defensive coordinator is his choice. Well, what about before that? How could he? It's not that, but okay. I want I want a Lamborghini, but I don't have Lamborghini money right now, right? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was the case for the longest time that he always had to go with his third, fourth, fifth. You know, how about your fifth choice? What's your fifth best choice? No, he got his top choice at every possible spot. So, like I said, no excuses because then we'll get the proof. If they don't win any of these games, say they lose to Oregon, but that doesn't mean they're going to lose. It's guaranteed that they're going to lose to Ohio State. It makes it a little more unlikely. But
Yeah.
say they lose to Oregon and they beat Ohio State, that kind of rights a bit of the wrongs. Hey, you won a big game, and honestly, that's more impressive because you went on the road and you did it, and you were not expected to by anybody. Okay, so they need to win at least one of these. I would say that if they happen to lose to Oregon, but they turn around and they beat Ohio State and they beat Indiana, I think all wrongs are written. They're right. They're fixed. And then kind of go from there. You know, keep winning.
No, I fully agree. I felt if you had talked to me about James Franklin um any year but 2016 before maybe 2023, maybe last year. I don't know, but it always seemed like they played Ohio State early at home or away. They lost that game, and the season kind of went downhill from there. But they never lost to a bad team. They always lost a
Yep.
game like they would lose to Ohio State and Michigan. Okay, great programs right there. Ohio State, Oregon, just kind of giving examples. I think one year was like Ohio State and then Michigan State, who was like a pretty good, like 8, 9 win team or something. James Franklin is like past that. Like you could tell there's growth and maturity there.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like if he's going to want to beat Ohio State, which I know he's going to want to win this game too, but you would hope that you not only lose this game in a way, you hope that it's a close loss that you can learn from and build off of. but that it doesn't just carry 1 week over, it carries the rest of the way.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely the, I'm glad you said it, most mature version of James Franklin that we've seen. I mean, sure,
Hmm.
James Franklin will still be James Franklin at times, but he seems more relaxed, I guess, in a sense. I've kind of noticed that he can be on edge at most times, if not all times of the day. And he's being a lot more coordinated with where his energy goes. There's almost an on and off switch. He seems very calm, reserved, relaxed, a little more happy to be doing his job. And I think that's, I've seen that progress over the past 2 3 years. I think that has to do with a change in administration. You have an athletic, again, you don't have to go and pound your desk and say we need this. It's not about me, it's about the program. If you want Penn State to do well, this is what Penn State needs. And he doesn't need to have those conversations anymore. Pat Kraft, the athletic director, and President Neely Bendapudi at Penn State say, what do you need? We'll give it to you because we understand within reason. Now, Penn State doesn't get a blank. Penn State football doesn't get a blank check, but I mean, they do have a lot of say because they do carry the most revenue, right? So,
Hmm.
but it never used to have to be, please, can I get, a few, just some money for NIL just to make ends meet. It's none of those conversations anymore. And I think because James Franklin can finally focus on football a little more rather than trying to be a philanthropist and a finance keeper and everything else, that Pat Kraft and everyone else is handling that. I think that takes a lot of pressure off him and allows him to do his job. That's the difference with Penn State and why I say, as we close here,
Hmm.
I'm confident in making a prediction that Penn State will win because I think this is a different version of Penn State because of those hidden factors that people don't see.
No doubt. Zach Seyko of Locked On Nittany Lions. Zach, shout your channel out. Let them know where they can find you on Twitter and everything. God bless you, brother, and we appreciate you coming on the show tonight, man. Love you, man.
Well, I want to extend the same blessings and thanks to you and all of your
Hmm.
viewers, all your listeners. So I appreciate that first and foremost. Good happiness and health, of course, to everybody. So I'm on YouTube. I do this daily. Locked On Nittany Lions. That's available on YouTube wherever you get your podcasts. So I appreciate that. I'm over on Twitter, X at Zach Seyko. So I will post my takes or analysis and whatever's related to Penn State football, wrestling, recruiting, you name it. Try to cover all sections of Penn State athletics as much as I can. So I think Penn State wins here 31-27 over Oregon. It's going to be close because that's still a top five Oregon team. That's a well-coached Oregon team. They're a lot further ahead of schedule than I thought they'd be. That'll be a fun game. Like I said, game of the year. Regular season game of the year.
Absolutely. Zach Seyko, Locked On Nittany Lions. Thanks, buddy. We are.
Yeah, Penn State, appreciate you. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. All right. Great interview there. If you want to be a part of the show, let me drop that StreamYard link one more time. We got a couple of viewers. We'll give it a few minutes. Actually, you know what? I'm tempted to go ahead and end the show. It is getting a little late here, but whatever. Great interview, Zach Seyko. Appreciate you for coming on, man. We'll have to keep in touch with him. I think he's given some really good insight and analysis. Locked On Nittany Lions uh, show host, podcast host. Of course, Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for college and pro. Everything is is over there. They got Bama, they got Georgia, they got Penn State as we had tonight. Just so much, really with just college and pro teams. So anyway, I'm tired. I'm gonna go to bed and get out of here. I love you guys. Jesus loves you. Keep your head up. God bless. And a big roll tide for Ballard Sports Media. Stay tuned, and we'll see you next time.